Thank you, and I'm really delighted to moderate now such a great panel with impressive women. And this panel is really a kickoff. It's a kickoff to have ideas for the further discussion, food for thoughts, and therefore we jumped directly into our discussion and also into the projects being realized or being started already on the ground. As we have heard already from the introduction, this is really historic because we are having here on the panel the first Minister for Environment and Climate at all for Somalia. Since 2 months you are in office, and the whole ministry is since 2 months only in office, underlining the urgency in Somalia. And I think it's great that you didn't have to wait for 151 years like we did in Germany to have finally a woman. You just started right with the women, because in Somalia we can see even more dramatically that the climate crisis hits hardest the poorest people, especially women and children, also in your country. So therefore it's no coincidence, but it's a strategic step. So congratulations, and it's really a pleasure having you here on the panel, dear Sharia Mohamed Al-Mashoumi. And my question would go directly to this field. You have always emphasized that climate impacts and conflict are threatening women and girls and kids especially. So how can we support especially those groups, those vulnerable groups like women in your region, but also in any other region around the globe?
Good morning, and thank you, Excellencies. Thank you, Excellencies. Thanks, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, as you say, Excellency, Somalian is the first time establishing Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and I saw delight for that. And as you mentioned, Somali women and Somalian girls are more than 50% populations. Historically, women participate in political, economic, and education and social decision-making has been low. Although climate change impacts men and women and girls in Somalia, but again, climate change affects severely women and the girls more than men. Although climate change impacts men, women and girls in Somalia, but again, climate change affects severely women and girls more than men, according to the last assessment, more than 80% displaced people by the droughts and women are women. Because of the climate change, and women and the girls have to walk a long distance just to get a wood, food, and water, just only to feed their families. As the result of the risk, the gender-based violence of sexual exploitation becomes high, and the variability of threats in the highest in Somalia. Men unable to secure the income for their families. Due to the lack of the job, men cannot able to find the work, so usually a woman becomes the breadwinner. The variability becomes more and the level of the threat increase because of the daily increasing of the threat of the woman. The government of Somalia is trying to set the gender of the goals of highlight the issues of the gender. So if we calculate how can we support empowering the youth and the women to have access on education, increasing the level of awareness about the gender-based violence and created by the climate change and the conflict due to the natural resource competitions. It's training and improving women, young girls' accessibilities and the health system and the gender equality. Provide technical and financial support to expand women access to produce resources such as agriculture and livestock and the blue economic. Assisting the ministry to have stability of the climate-related funds such as the Green Climate Fund, Global Environmental Funds, Adaptation Fund, and other available funds so we can streamline to the climate change-related activities which can empower the variable communities such as the women and the young girls. Promote women lead and the women-focused sustainable solution to provide them as well new jobs and skill trainings for the women and the girls. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe on a practical note, because we are discussing here also instruments with regard to risk reduction insurance initiatives, what would you say would be the most helpful and beneficial instrument if we are talking about loss and damage adaptation with regard to women and girls?
Important question, Excellency, thank you. And we currently have a military operation going on, increasing the size of the government-controlled areas so that serfs can be brought to the place that never had been of almost 15 years. The following method can be taken to implement support and conflict areas. Security risk assessment and local level has to be carried out. Better to understand the community-related climate change and climate security risk. Bottom up the community participating and engagement. Integrate climate conflict nexus into the program activities and align with the National Development Plan and conflict stabilizations effort. The government of Somalia is committed to integrate climate change and the climate security into the development program. And I think all international partners can support an effort as usually they always support and always there for Somalia. But Somalia needs now more support regarding their climate security. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you very much. And I think this is an important point underlining to integrate those groups, actors, and especially women in this field in the projects to be implemented and actually do have access to the areas where the support is mostly needed. So thanks for sharing and giving a great kickoff for the difficult situation in countries like yours, where we can see how climate crisis and conflicts are closely connected. We move over to the United Arab Emirates. Minister Mariam Al-Mashuraei. Thanks for being with us today. We stay in English, even though you speak fluent German. Your country is currently a member of the UN Security Council, a country also experiencing severe climate impacts. What are the UAE's insights on how to incorporate climate action into the existing UN security architecture? And what would you say, especially with regard to food security, how we can intensify the work being done already from the different UN organizations, but also to linking it towards the question of security and climate change?
Thank you so much, Annalena. Thank you for inviting us here. Thank you for having us here. It's a very important topic to understand that climate change is not something that one ministry, such as our ministry, just looks at. It cuts across, and I think Germany has very much realized this, and that's why you see the subject of climate change across so many ministries. So the UAE, of course, being a country that is water scarce, it has very little arable land. We have the extreme climate has always been something that we've been dealing with. And so we've been on the journey of climate action already a long time ago because of the challenges that we face. So when we look at, for example, on the energy pathway, we already about 20 years ago started to think of diversifying because we understood that it is really important that we don't depend on one energy source. We understood that technology and innovation is really key here, and so we started investing heavily in solar energy because the sun was shining every day. We said, why are we not making use of this source? And after about $40 billion investment in the country, about $50 billion investment outside in about 70 countries, we're now at a place where we're operating 3 of the largest solar parks in the world at the lowest cost. On the food security side, we also realize innovation and technology is key because being able to grow food all year round is a challenge. But now with technology and innovation, we have realized this is possible. And now in the UAE, we're finding kale, salmon, berries are being grown in the desert, not yet all year round because we're still finding challenges in the summer, but it's because of technologies that we're finding this. And what's happening as well is because we're adopting technology and we're adapting it, we're then able to drive operational costs down. And this is where it becomes really interesting to then help other countries, such as Somalia. We have something in Liberia as well, where we're helping women actually use kind of low-tech technology to be able to grow their food for their communities. And Elena, I think what's really important here is, getting countries together and talking about what are you doing to accelerate solutions. And for us, because we're going towards COP28, so the UAE is really digging down to say, what can we do to help climate vulnerable communities? Nature-based solutions is also a key. Looking at what, for example, mangroves. We don't have the typical forest that you have here in Germany, but we have mangroves that can grow in salty, really high saline water on the coastlines. Not only do they tick the boxes on biodiversity, coastal protection, they sequester CO2. And at the same time, when you think of now ecotourism and things like that, they can really bring livelihoods as well to communities. So we're very much looking at a lot of initiatives on mangroves. We also launched Aim for Sea with the United States at COP26, and this is really picking up a lot of speed as well, and hopefully at COP27 we'll be showcasing some of the initiatives there. So there's already over 200 partners on board, and this is all about accelerating solutions for climate resilient systems. So, thanks.
Thank you, especially for highlighting this, that it's about a solution when you're talking about accelerating. Because I think this is what at least gives me the greatest headache. We know what the solutions are. We know also how we could implement them, but somehow they don't materialize into concrete projects, especially not enough in those countries where we highly need them. What do you see at the biggest hurdles? Because you're saying in your country you're developing these kind of technical solutions. So what are the hurdles in your own country? We realize in Germany it's a lot of bureaucracy, that it took like 7 years to build a windmill. Now we are fastening this process. But what are you saying are the hurdles in your country? But especially, you were talking about Liberia. What was the change that you could actually bring the projects on the ground?
I think what's really important, Annalena, is leadership. We need leadership. Today, in this fast-changing world, someone needs to take the baton and say, let's go this direction. And that's why having partners on board, you talked about the really great initiative of Climate for Peace. Initiatives like this bring countries together and say, okay, we all have the same cause, we want to work towards this cause, what can we do exactly? Okay, how can we help each other? Every country has its own challenges. Our own challenges are, it's the water scarcity. Yes, we can now grow food using closed systems, but they still require a large amount of water. And then we have to think of, okay, what water source could we use? Because in these systems, the water is mainly used actually for cooling and not for the plant itself. So then you think of, okay, what's a sustainable source? Okay, maybe treated wastewater, because that's a sustainable source. So we're looking into these kind of things. So it actually never stops. There's always a challenge moving forward, but I think when you have leadership and you have the political will to move forward, I mean, this has helped us in the UAE. It was a very young country, we're just over 50 years old, but looking at where we're at is because of the leadership that we have.
Thanks a lot also for being very clear on this point, Mariam. Shariha, if you hear this right now, because the water problem is obviously also one in your country, what would you say just out of the blue right now, because this is a question coming up here at the panel. If you would like to implement these kind of water projects, what is mostly needed to bring investors, to bring those partners on the ground in your country?
It's a very important question. In Somalia, as you know, there's 4 decades, and the rain, we have a biggest problem of the rain. And our cultural sides is we have droughts, or there is no water at all, become dries. So this is the main effect is the country, and this is the humanitarian effect for the food security, the water issues that we have, the biggest problem. But we need assessment now for finding it a way, how can we get out of these situations of the water? So as I mentioned, the water is the biggest huge now we have for the agriculture side. At the same time, of the area of the security sector of the agriculture side is being captured by Al-Shabaab. So the government now pushing at the best of level that could move Al-Shabaab from their security sector, could able to find a solution. How can we able to find for the water assessment? So we're working on it, and we will be implementing soon, inshallah, regarding about the water. Thank you.
Thank you. So we see already a potential future project here between the two countries. Johanna, State Secretary of the Foreign Ministry of Finland, it's really a pleasure having you here as well, because we've been discussing a long time in the European Union what we actually have to do. Finally, with Fit for 55, we are there, that we are more pushy also from the European side to really do more on mitigation. But your country has already in 2019 launched an action plan for climate smart foreign policy. We are following this now, bringing climate foreign policy into the Foreign Office. What would you say is your advice to government from your experience since 2019 to follow your example of mainstreaming climate action into foreign policy?
Thank you very much, Minister. And actually, me being here today is part of our climate diplomacy action. We have actually an action plan on climate diplomacy, and we try to really make it very active to also convince the big emitters to turn their way to the more sustainable climate and energy policy. I would like to start actually by thanking German Foreign Office and you, Minister, for taking this initiative, because I think it's a very good chance to discuss what concrete ways we can have to actually transform climate and security agenda into concrete policy and concrete actions and financing. And I think in this time when we have long time discussed about the economic impacts of climate change into people's life and livelihoods, now we have to also look at, to put into this triangle security implications. We have been long discussing it, but now we have to take more concrete way to really address that. We have also the deteriorating situation in Europe because of Russia's aggression in Ukraine. And I think this all adds up to this already challenging situation with the climate change and economic challenges as well. There's growing inflation in many countries, and this all impacts on people's lives, their work, their working environments and livelihoods. And that has an impact on security situation as well. I think what I was very happy about in this panel, I took lots of notes, was that you all mentioned early warning systems and water. And now when we are discussing about the tangible ways to address this topic or theme, I'd like to, on a more general note, to say that we need to advance sustainable energy transition, also known as green transition. And we have to do it more quickly than we were doing it so far. I think this security crisis has actually put us in a situation that we have to face how we become energy self-sustainable in energy production, how we do it in a way that doesn't harm future generations. And one issue is to invest and do government-level cooperation in advancing the green transition, especially in developing countries in which people suffer of the consequences of climate change more, and also they haven't caused it at a level that we have caused it in more wealthy countries. So I think it's even that we all now would focus on also the developing countries especially. And when it comes to water, we are actually heading towards the UN Water Conference. It's taking place next March in New York, and it's a very important moment to talk about water security, which is really heavily intertwined with the climate security, because the climate change has an impact on hydrological cycles, and it thus has also impact on water scarcity, which was mentioned by my colleague from the UAE. And I have learned that there are so many countries, more than half of the population are now living on the world scale, at the world scale, in countries that are suffering from the water scarcity. And we need to really address that. It's also a security and climate issue. Anna-Lena, you also mentioned early warning systems and early response systems. That's something that Finland is doing a lot. We are focusing on meteorological services and early systems because they are one of the most cost-effective way to actually impact on climate change and to the areas which are suffering from changing weather phenomena. And I also have learned that 1/3 of the world's population is still without early warning systems. And they are mainly in least developed countries and in small island developing states. So we really have to address that. Lastly, I would also like to say that we need to mainstream gender equality in climate and security agenda, because we cannot build sustainable future if part of the humankind is excluded from the policy making or actually having some kind of agency in making this change happen. And that's why we in Finland have focused a lot in gender mainstreaming in our foreign policy and engaging and also liaising with the women's organizations and supporting the most vulnerable groups. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for bringing all these different aspects together. But as you have mentioned already before, it's only way to integrate all the different sectors, be it gender, be it security, be it water, be it climate crisis. So you've mentioned that only that 1/3 of the countries doesn't have early warning, and I think we have seen it in so many countries what kind of difference it could make. When we all remember the tsunami a couple of years ago, and then afterwards, when the systems have been installed in different parts of the regions, that it definitely could save lives. So what is your experience from Finland? How to bring to the rest of the world those early warning systems? Similar question then here, is it a question of a technique, of money, of expert sharing, of lack of cooperation? What would you say is the way to go forward?
Well, one response would be that we have to cooperate with the private sector. We, for example, have know-how and knowledge and expertise on weather and meteorological systems in several companies. And I know that in our development policy, we have actually been liaising with those companies to provide those services. And I think that is the way to go. We need private sector in this endeavor. We can't do it only by the governments. And that's probably my advice from Finland, that we have had really good cooperation with the private sector on this.
Thank you, and in this regard, also warm welcome to the private sector here at this conference. Thanks to all the panelists who have shown what this conference of 2 days, this is a 2-day conference, this is also very special, is all about finding solutions, learning from each other, share experience. So I would really like to thank you for doing a great kickoff for the conference here for the next 2 days for the Berlin Climate and Security Conference, where we will dive deeper into the different fields of early warning, the problem of water, the techniques which are actually there but not installed in every country. We will now continue to launch the Climate for Peace initiative as a kickoff also for further work we are doing jointly together with all the different ministries, be it environment, be it climate, be it foreign policy. And this will also reflect what this conference is all about, to coordinate joint projects, to exchange best practice, and to start common initiatives. And I'm now handing over to the moderator to launch the ceremony. And I welcome you again and wish you a very inspiring conference here in Berlin.